Mangwanani Mwalelepo Vukenjani, Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show that remains your portal into Africa's most potent stories. You are joined by Ashwin Mbedi, and it is a very chilly Monday morning here in Windhoek, but we do expect the sun to shine as it always does. However, these are the top stories stemming from across the continent. Zimbabwe president's term extension drive advances after parliamentary vote. Washington to begin phased withdrawal of HIV support to South Africa. Africa CDC urges continent to finance its own Ebola fight. Ghana conference adopts joint African-Caribbean reparations plan. And South Africa and Egypt continue to dominate Africa's leading universities. Mike Sichula will also be joining us from Zambia to deliver the Zambia Report. However, as always, we'd like to report how the Africans are doing at the FIFA World Cup. And the latest result from this morning is our brothers from Cape Verde, managing a 2-2 draw against Uruguay in a game that they were widely expected to lose, but that was the case against Spain. So Cabo Verde now has 2 goals, which means they also scored their first ever goal at the FIFA World Cup. What a time of celebration for the nation of just over 500,000 people. Underestimated, underrated, but definitely not ignored. This is Africa Good Morning. Top stories shortly.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises. From artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative sport tourism.
Getting into our top stories. Emmerson Mnangagwa's political skills earned him the nickname Crocodile. But it took half a century of working under Robert Mugabe before he secured Zimbabwe's highest office. Nearly a decade after becoming the country's second post-independence leader, Mnangagwa appears unwilling to see his tenure end. Zimbabwe's parliament voted in legislation on Thursday to amend the constitution and extend presidential terms from 5 years to 7. The move would allow the 83-year-old president to remain in office until 2030, 3 years beyond the expiry of his current term. His presidency began following the November 2017 coup. Supporters in ZANU-PF say the extension would promote stability, reduce election costs, and support longer-term economic planning. The proposals have met unusual resistance from sections of the public and some independence war veterans who accuse Mnangagwa of attempting a power grab. Other proposed constitutional changes include allowing Parliament to elect the president instead of a direct popular vote. The measures still require approval from the Senate before ratification. Mnangagwa first presented himself as a reformer, promising spending cuts and privatization of state firms. But his presidency has also been marked by economic instability and criticism over crackdowns on dissent. And then you would think of voices of dissent, some of them led by Professor Lovemore Maduku, who at some point said that when you sit down for an exam which you know is going to be 2 hours, if you haven't finished that exam, you don't ask for an extension in order to show what you have. You simply leave the exam room. Now, we move over to our next story. The United States government says it will stop funding programs in South Africa aimed at reducing the spread of HIV and AIDS. South Africa has more than 8 million people living with HIV, the highest number recorded by any country globally. The U.S. State Department appeared to connect the decision to what it described as South Africa's failure to protect the white minority Afrikaner community, an allegation repeatedly rejected by the South African government. South Africa's health ministry said it had not been informed of the decision, but had long been developing a self-reliance plan. Until 2025, the United States contributed an estimated $400 million annually through the President's Emergency Fund for AIDS Relief, known as PEPFAR. Relations between the two countries have deteriorated since President Donald Trump returned to office. Trump issued an executive order alleging that South African policies dismantled equal opportunities and fueled violence against racially disfavored landowners. South Africa disputes the allegations and maintains that black economic empowerment addresses inequalities dating back to apartheid. A U.S. official confirmed a phased drawdown of PEPFAR funding would begin, saying South Africa had failed to make demonstrable progress on administration policy requests and was capable of funding its own health programs. Now, the head of Africa's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says African countries must invest their own resources into responding to Ebola outbreaks. The current outbreak has claimed more than 200 lives, while around 900 infections have been confirmed. Authorities believe the actual number of cases is higher because the outbreak was identified several weeks late. Efforts to contain the disease have been complicated by the absence of an approved vaccine or treatment for the Bundibugyo virus responsible for the outbreak. Speaking at Africa CDC headquarters in Addis Ababa, Director General Dr. Jean Kaseya said other regions would already have developed medicines and vaccines if the outbreak were affecting their populations. He said a lack of international interest should serve as a wake-up call for Africa to prioritize manufacturing medicines and vaccines to address its own health needs. African and Caribbean nations have demanded formal apologies, debt relief, and financial compensations from nations that benefited from transatlantic slavery. The calls form part of a 19-point reparations plan endorsed at the conclusion of a 3-day conference in Ghana. The meeting followed the approval in March of a United Nations resolution recognizing transatlantic slavery as the gravest crime against humanity, despite opposition from Europe and the United States, as well as Israel. The plan was adopted by the African Union and the Caribbean Community Commission on Reparatory Justice and does not identify specific countries expected to apologize. It proposes creating a global reparations fund, canceling or reducing debt for affected countries, and reforming international financial institutions to improve representation for global South nations. The document also calls for returning looted cultural artifacts and ancestral remains, financing climate justice initiatives, and addressing the particular suffering endured by African women and girls during slavery. Delegates urged African countries to establish pathways for diaspora Africans to return and obtain citizenship while preserving slave forts and castles as memorial sites. Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama said history required people to inherit responsibility rather than guilt. And this footage, highly emotive footage, is from the Ghana presidency page.
They came bearing shiny trinkets and gifts. They came on the good Jesus ship. They said they wanted to make a trade, but the plan was to create an international market off the backs of African slaves. Now, universal law tells us that this wicked debt must be paid for all the souls that Mother Africa gave. Because the slave that created the currency for the new European age is the same gold that gives value to our currency of today. And that gold should have had the names of the African people engraved, because the motherland was stripped of everything and its people were betrayed.
Our voices were fragmented for decades, and it served the interests of some groups to keep those voices fragmented. Juneteenth is about our comrades in the United States who 2 years after the Emancipation Act had been signed that said that all slaves were free, only heard about their freedom 2 years after. And I'm happy that for the first time, we're beginning to speak with one voice. And this is just one such example of speaking with one voice, that us and our brothers and sisters in the United States, even as they celebrate Juneteenth, are celebrating it with them here, the origin of whatever took place. We are celebrating them too, for their resilience, for their survival, for their strength, for their faith. And so we'll work together with one voice, as we did, to move this resolution in the General Assembly, because in unity lies strength. And so our work goes beyond reparations. It goes beyond return of artifacts. It goes into advocacy for creating a more equal world, to a world that offers opportunity to everyone, and to a world that is fair and just.
The resolution which we've passed at the UN and here today give us a door, but it is unity that will give us the strength to walk through that door.
Those have been our top stories on Africa Good Morning. Shortly, we'll be joined by Mike Sichula as he delivers the Zambia Report. All right, it's time for us to be joined by Mr. Mike Sichula as he delivers the Zambia Report. Mr. Sichula, Muribanji.
Muribanji, Africa, good morning to our dear.
Africa, good morning indeed, sir. Now, we understand the Electoral Commission of Zambia is meeting political parties today. Could you tell us why?
Yes, So the background to this is that we are now 52 days before the 13th August general elections, and under the Zambian constitution, 90 days before the date of the election, political parties are allowed to go out and start campaigning. But however, last week on Friday, I think on Thursday, the Electoral Commission of Zambia issued an advisory to all political parties, especially to all political parties, but in this case, presidential candidates, to suspend their campaigns so that they can meet today, Monday, and draft a presidential campaign schedule. The idea is that the presidential candidates should not crash in any of the 10 provinces of Zambia. So this is something that a number of political parties disagreed with this case. So one of them that disagreed is Brian Mundubire and Citizens First Hari Kalaba. So the pictures you can see there are for a political party, for the political party which is a front runner. They were supposed to have their presidential campaign meeting in the eastern province of Zambia. But after this advisory was issued, police moved in to prevent this political party from having their meeting. So the meeting that is going to take place today by the Electoral Commission of Zambia is aimed at harmonizing the electoral calendar for presidential candidates. So what our viewers need to know is that in Zambia, if the president is in Region A, political parties are not allowed to be in that region. It is only the sitting president who must be in that region. So this is what the Electoral Commission of Zambia wants to harmonize. But political parties are saying this is eating into their time, because they are only remaining with 52 days, and today itself being Monday, which has been taken away, so meaning they are remaining with 51 days in which to canvass for support across Zambia. So it is something that has disappointed a lot of political parties, but others are saying it is okay so that the electoral calendar for presidential candidates is harmonized to avoid possible cases and possible disadvantaging one political party from the other. So we're going to see how the process is going to be by the end of today.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that update. In a related update, the Constitutional Court has thrown out an application which was against President Hakainde Hichilema's nomination for this upcoming election.
Yes, the Constitutional Court has done that, and it was widely expected that there was no way the Constitutional Court was going to entertain that petition, because it was going to cause a crisis in the event that the Electoral Commission of Zambia could have put out a verdict to say Mr. Hakainde Hichilema was not duly nominated to run for office of presidency on the August 13th. So the outcome was widely expected. But one thing that our viewers need to know is that this petition was actually filed before the Constitutional Court by one of the members of the governing party, Mr. Charles Longwe, who said the primaries that were held during in the governing party, the UPND, was done after their term of office had already expired. So the Zambian constitution demands that any political party should have a general convention to elect new office bearers after 5 years. So what happened in the governing party, they didn't have before they didn't hold these general elections to elect new office bearers. The term of office for President Hakainde Hichilema and other members of the governing party had expired by February. And when we are going towards almost the parliament was almost dissolving, the governing party had not yet ushered in new office bearers. So this is why Mr. Charles Longwe took the governing party to court. But however, the outcome has come out not in favor for him. However, one thing that our viewers need to know is that, like I said earlier, in the event that the Constitutional Court could have said, yes, Mr. Charles Longwe was right, and the governing party did not do the right thing, it was going to cause a constitutional crisis in as far as the governing party going to field in another presidential candidate, because filing in of nominations for presidential candidate had expired, and there was no way the Electoral Commission of Zambia was going to allow for fresh nomination from the governing party.
All right, moving on as we close off, Mike, and actually, if you don't mind, I'm just going to sign off before you get into your final story. This has been Africa Good Morning on DSTV285 GOTV, 251up2.com, and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA, keeping in mind that Africa is spelt with a K. We have been talking to Mr. Mike Sichula, delivering the Zambia Report, talking about the elections, and there's going to be lots of updates as we head to the August 12 and 13 actually general elections. But now, Mike, I understand the University of Zambia has delayed midterm examinations. Why is that?
So the background is that there was a crisis in terms of sanitation. So the University of Zambia engaged, the Zambian government engaged the Zambia National Service to correct the situation. However, after 2 weeks, 3 weeks of works, where they did the test run of the sewer system, which had broken down, and after 4 days of testing, they discovered that the sewer system was not working as they thought. Hence, they decided to send off the students who had come, and meaning now when you send off the students, they just had to postpone the midterm exams, which were starting today, Monday. So their students are not going to have their midterm exam until the situation is rectified, because the sanitation problem has been something